Hello, everyone. I'm Meredith, and welcome to Conversation with Friends. And I'm really delighted tonight to get to interview. I can't say that he's an old friend because we only go back a few years, but I felt like the moment that I met him years ago, and we had an amazing conversation about the work that he was doing, is doing as the founder of the Peace Studio, Todd Shuster. I just immediately felt like we're connected, along with a lot of other people that he's brought along with his nonprofit. And we'll talk about that later. But I first want to talk about Todd, who's a very, very distinguished literary agent, has worked with many leading authors, and I mean, all writers, of course, and also films Todd has done. Mostly, as I understand it, Todd, you'll tell me in a minute, is they have to do with social change and creating a better world. And then just last year, I guess it's in the last year, Todd, who is also a writer, but decided he was going to write a book. And guess what kind of book he wrote? A children's book. This book is an amazing book. And I tell you, because anybody I know that I've given this book to or has read the book, can you see that? I think you can see that. It's called The First Day of Peace. It's a picture book. Welcome, Todd, to Conversations with Friends, and I'm really thrilled to get to interview you. And Todd, I mean, that's like a big shift in a sense. I mean, you're already a writer and an agent and all of that, but a children's book. How did you decide to write something that you felt could really make an impact on children and their parents too, I hope? Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that warm welcome, Meredith. Really appreciate it. I really wanted to create a book that would be accessible to young people and families. Peace is an abstract concept, even for adults to understand. And so I thought if there was a way to tell a story about showing the ways in which children themselves can help effect a culture of peace, that would be, an important contribution to make to the literature.
So it was your feeling, and I think probably with everything that you take on, with all of the work that you do, is how can I mean, not that you're thinking, how can I make an impact, but how can my work make an impact? Can it create some kind of change? And I just want to say, and I told you this before, that when I read this to my grandchildren, I guess in the last year, last year, it's like they lit up and they got it, they got it. And children understand these things, they really do understand being the ones to really do good in the world, don't they? And that it's possible. And would you say that children, it's maybe even easier to be able to influence a child that's just open and usually peaceful and loving, except of course when they're fighting, right? But that's normal. But is it easier to influence a child than adults who have kind of got baggage already?
Well, I secretly hope that this book will also influence the adults, but I think I wanted to craft a story about neighbors, people living essentially in the same community, who somehow maybe see a distinction between themselves. So in the book, there's the mountain people and the valley people. And of course, they essentially look the same. They live on the same land, maybe some geographic distinction. Maybe there's some differences between them. And they have to share natural resources. And when some challenging things happen in the environment that cause storms and either too much water or a lack of water, how do they decide to sort of roll with each other when challenged? And my hope is that the book helps young people understand that sharing, whether it's a sandwich at lunchtime or natural resources like water, is so important. That's often the starting place for a friendship or for peace building.
And so it's often just even little things that can, where you can do something when something happens in your life, or whether it's, something small, whether it's a child or an adult, if you just create some kind of goodness and do something to help others. So would you say, in a way, I mean, change and really creating change, and that's what your book is all about in our society, beginning with, can I say the end of the story? Almost one person, right? One child. And one person, often people just feel that they can't do anything, you know? People have said to me, and really successful people have said, oh, and I'm not even talking about your book, but just this idea. They'll say, oh, that's a noble idea. Oh, that's great that you believe in change and that we can change the world, but look at the mess that we're in now. And, you know, they probably would have said it years ago too, you know, it would have been the same answer. So I'm just wondering, what do you say to people like that?
I co-wrote the book with Maya Sotoro, who is a wonderful scholar of peace in Hawaii, and also one of the co-founders of the Peace Studio. And she teaches us that you know, peace really begins within. It begins through our self-reflective practices, and that if we sort of find that inner state of calm and a capacity to sort of roll with the things that happen to us that are sometimes challenging in a peaceful and contemplative way, that's going to improve our friendships, our relationships, our community, and ultimately even, you know, geopolitical conflicts. And she also says, you know, that peace really begins with the small steps that each one of us can take. And I very much see this book in that light, both as the opportunity for the book to maybe affect people's way of seeing the world, but also just in the story that there's a little girl in the book who, when she realizes the Valley people are really struggling and don't have enough food, she says, we can help, let's go help. And it's her initiative, that little girl, when all the other adults are sort of quarreling and holding on to old disputes and anger, to say, like, let's turn the page, let's just help. These are our neighbors, let's help them out. And so, yeah, I think it's very much seeing the capacity we all have, and even just the smallest ways to make change that can ultimately create broad social transformations.
It's so freeing, isn't it? I mean, because if you feel that you can't do anything, the problems are too big in the world, how are you going to make a dent? You know, I remember speaking with someone who was just so successful in his business, you know, super successful, a real, a change maker in business, you know, is able to come up with an idea and do well. And I talked to him about these kinds of things. And he said, you know, he didn't feel he could do anything, and that he would just, get more involved in, to say sports, and which a lot of men do, right? And that, or just enjoy his life, though he has done good things. And I know that about him, but his feeling was, as successful as he was, he couldn't really do anything. But what you're saying, and I of course believe this too, as, a student of the Brahma Kumaris, that like, it's just the tiny things that, and, that really can affect people. That's the amazing thing, is that it's like the pay it forward. I remember that movie a long time ago, that if you do something, then that person will say, gee, I can do something. And so would you say, I feel that, I mean, people, when I got involved with these kinds of things, and I was involved, with Images and Voices of Hope, which merged with the Peace Studio. Now I'm proud to say that I'm a board member of the Peace Studio. I don't think I said that at the beginning. I really started to learn more and more about this, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many people come to your small gatherings. If people walk out and they've been changed, then they go out, and it's just keep, so is that in a way the constant, almost like our mantra should be, is just keep going, and with this idea, and I always feel like who's ever meant to change will, if somebody's not, then they're not ready. That's okay. But do you feel like you just keep going and you don't, because sometimes we can lose hope too, right? That nobody's listening, or how many people are getting things, and that can be dangerous, in terms of if we feel like we're not making an impact, right? But
I think you're right that we sort of have to meet people where they are, and hopefully they're ready to engage and open to hearing your perspective, Something I love about, one of the many things I love about the Brahma Kumaris is their real devotion to meditation and their mastery, their commitment to mastering a connection through that work, which really helps them ground themselves and develop what we're talking about, a culture of peace where everyone feels the conviction and courage to choose a peaceful solution rather than a violent one, to handle just because we're all going to struggle with loss, with distress, with trauma even. How do we cope with it when that does happen? What relationships have we formed? What communities have we created, or have we found a way to belong to that can give us that loving surround so that we can make it through when times are difficult? And I hope with the First Day of Peace, this book is to imbue children and their families with a sense of that possibility.
Yeah, I love the idea, of children and their parents, because they're doing it together, and it's something that, the child will get it, and maybe quicker, like I said, we've said, than the parent, but the parent just reading the book to the child is, a bonding, and where you are able to feel, it's like a feeling, isn't it? Helping and loving and compassion. I mean, isn't in a way that really what's really at the core of everybody, but we've forgotten who we are, and that we've just gotten into as a world, just more extreme, more angry, more wanting to just selfish. Is that all of these things that we like? I like what you said, working on yourself. It starts with yourself, getting rid of your own stuff, your own negative stuff. It starts with us. And I think, I just think that it's just like, again, one by one, things can change, but families changing. And tell me a bit about this community idea, because I think that's super important. It's not just about me changing, it's being part of the community and knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah, so well put, Meredith. Especially in these times where technology and other sort of major social shifts are pulling us apart, disaggregating industries, pushing people towards a culture of loneliness. And I think it's super important to find ways, whether it's in the evenings or on the weekends, if we're working adults or we just have busy lives, finding those spaces to connect in person with friends, family, and community, so that we're not navigating this life alone, in front of our screens, quiet quitting, sitting at home in isolation. None of that is healthy for human beings. We're social creatures. And even if we're introverted or shy, just finding those moments when we can share who we are and learn about other people in community, I just think it's critically important.
It's the connection, isn't it? To be connected. There, for many years before COVID, I had a meditation class at my house. And, people came, they didn't come, but there were always people coming out, and speakers sometimes. And then I stopped during COVID, and we went on Zoom. And, I was very happy because we had some people we didn't have anymore. They didn't want to be on Zoom, whatever. And then I felt still that something's missing. I really did. And I felt like something was missing in my personal life, even though I do go to a center with the Brahma Kumaris and I do meditate. I felt I wanted it in, where I live. And so I didn't know who would come. And at first it was just a couple of people a few months ago. And then more people came. And then it's interesting because some people come one week, other people come another week, but it's like they come and they feel like they're, what you're saying, they're part of a community. And it is different. And so, to have that attitude, right? Oh, I can watch it on Zoom. There's so much on Zoom. A person can sit there for days, and be inspired by, all these great teachers and everything, all kinds of teachers of all, cultures and religions or whatever. But it isn't the same, isn't it? You need to have some, like you say, connection to others. It changes everything, doesn't it?
It really does. And, video conferencing is a wonderful tool. But the sensual, intellectual, emotional experience of just being with each other in a room, so important to our healing and our future.
So was there a time when you changed, I mean, you're pretty, involved in the world, the literary world. You're also an attorney. I forgot to mention that, right? I mean, you've accomplished a lot and you continue to. So, but was there a time in your life some years ago where you just felt, yeah, success is great, but there's something missing, or did you understand that all along?
I really appreciate that question, and it's difficult to answer because it requires self-knowledge, which I'm still working on. But I think I tie my interest in this work and my beliefs in this realm to losses that I've experienced. And very young, a young woman I was very close to passed away of leukemia when I was 13. And it was very sudden and unexpected. And it definitely informed me about the brevity and fragility of this life. And she was just, a wonderful soul. And learning that what matters most are our friendships and relationships and how we comport ourselves as human beings. And that's very much what the Peace Studio is about. And the first day of peace, both are really trying to help people be their best selves and to help each other again, across all of life's sort of challenges and insults and injuries. So I think as sad as it is that some of us experience those losses early on in life, they can hopefully inform an optimism and a commitment to this kind of thinking.
Yeah, so sometimes an experience that you had, it might not even be a person. It's an experience that you had, and maybe you don't even realize it until years later that experience, that you learned something. So even from these seemingly bad experiences, I mean, I for me personally, I don't want to interview myself. I mean, I'm thinking about my own experience was, I thought that I had a really nice life, my family, my work. I love my work in the media and community show, local show. But I was like stressed, I was just on edge. And a man that I worked with who also suddenly showed up at the station, and he died quite young. He died of AIDS, and he secretly didn't tell anyone in those days. People were, didn't talk about it, and they didn't have all the medicines. And he was the one that said to me, "We need to meditate." He was like my messenger. He said, "We need to meditate." And I said, "I don't need to meditate. I'm fine. I'm like, I'm busy, but I'm fine." And he goes, "No." And he found the Brahma Kumari Center. It was just opened in Miami.
Wow.
Veronica, whom you've met, and right. And yeah. And he kind of forced me to go. And he said to me, "You should go. It's for your life." And suddenly something in me just went, I'm missing something. And I don't even know what it is. I didn't know what I was missing. And then, like you have these little things that happen in life that you have do you think in a way sense we do have messengers or experiences that transform, that not transform, that awaken us, they're awakening experiences. And would you say you need to pay attention to these things? They're not just either bad things or problem situations or whatever. They're real. They're there to teach you something.
They really are, and you've put this all so well. I mean, my first teacher was, a Danish monk who was committed to TM, and I learned in college, I had a mantra, and it's funny because the mantra was Brahma, and
didn't know that.
Yeah, and by meeting people like you, Meredith, but also Judy Rogers and Gayatri Naren, and Sister Jenki and others, and seeing their work and admiring their presence and presence of mind and their spirit and kindness to others, and the depth of their curiosity about the unknown, all of those attributes and the feeling of warmth and love that one experiences among the BKs is so inspiring. And so that has also helped me deepen my own practice and be creative in the ways that I think that I am now.
And you I see, over the short time that I know you, you're always on the move and you're doing things and you're making things happen, but you do it very gently, you're not, I don't see any aggression or, we got to do this, or if it doesn't work, it's okay. If something doesn't work, we move on. And I just feel that this is really where we all need to be, is just maybe moving forward, but not with push, or not with, like an obsession or anything about it. But on the other hand, I remember one of the programs that the Peace Studio showed with the Nobel Prize winners. And what one of them said was, there was, like, I think 4 of them on or something, talking about change in the world. And one said, it's going to be the young people that change the world. He was very much like, they are going to change the world. Do you see that? Do you feel that, and not that older people, that we don't want to just get rid of them, us or me, but I mean, do you see that the younger people are more aware, maybe, or a lot more of them than ever before?
Yeah, what I'm seeing, I'm blessed with both a son and a daughter, and they're in their 20s. I'm
So
seeing, in
yeah,
that generation, among colleagues of mine who are much younger than me, is really a sharpened awareness of the importance of how we treat people, how we think about difference, how we embrace issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, et cetera. And they are speaking their truth with tremendous courage. I think it was John F. Kennedy who said, "There's nothing to fear but fear itself." And I feel as though many of these young people are fearless in a wonderful way. Sometimes it's humbling because they will call us out as older people. And we wish they wouldn't, maybe, but often there's wisdom behind what they're saying. And if you listen carefully, they're really pointing to some things that can change and should change, and that we together through intergenerational understanding can definitely look after and move things forward.
They are, so many of them are aware, and they see their friends that might be suffering. They see, the education system, which has problems, of course, the political system. I mean, when I grew up, it was just not any of this. I mean, there was more faith or trust in, especially in our country. I think there was a lot of distrust. So, which kind of leads me to the question: how do you, as really, we call you a peace activist in a way, you are, or a peace, I mean, just a person that's really moving quickly with introducing people to all of these ideas of bringing peace to the world and everything. So how do you deal with just the conflict? And if you meet someone who isn't on the same page and really has some, maybe what you feel are not, are more destructive, or they're not supportive of a better world, how do you respond to them? How do you communicate with them?
Yeah, it's challenging work, and it's at the center, I think, of what we all have to be taking on right now, including humbling ourselves to not necessarily think that we are, right. Something that Maya and Judy, our co-founders, have taught us at the Peace Studio is that it doesn't work to kind of stick your feet in the sand and hold onto your own perspective. So I think, to answer your question, really listening to whomever I'm speaking with and repeating back to them what I'm hearing and making sure I understand their perspective, and doing my best to let them know that I understand what they're saying and recognize the validity of what they're saying, and then invite them into my way of seeing things and ask if they might be open to some dialogue around that. I think this has been particularly important, for example, in talking about the Middle East right now, where people have very strong feelings, and rather than taking a stance that is absolute, learning how to sustain conflicting ideas or contradictions at the same time, even if it's sometimes awkward or painful or doesn't feel possible. If we can sustain those, ideas that may be at odds with each other, understanding that sometimes life and the world is complex, and trying to, be comfortable with nuances, with gaps of understanding, or just ways that we just can't agree right now, but we can still agree on a lot of other things.
So really, you're saying you have to really respect the other person, even if you're not on the same page. And like you just gave such a good example, people are, have their ideas and their experiences. If something bad happened to them, I mean, and a lot of people had things that have happened. Everybody has, I'm sure, something. And that shapes, how they're thinking, which might not be the way you think or I think, but maybe respect for others and ability to listen to others, right? And not getting angry and getting offended, or, I mean, I've seen it even with people who are very spiritual. They can suddenly go off, or, get
Absolutely.
upset with someone else's opinions, and it's to me a challenge. It can be a challenge. I personally have learned sometimes if I don't agree is to kind of, I can talk, of course, but not say anything if I feel like saying something that I know is going to be not offensive, but it might, we don't want to polarize, do we? If we want to bring peace to the world, we have to accept and respect others.
Accept and respect, but also speak our truth.
Yes, good. Well said. Yeah.
It is challenging because we all want our ideas and perspectives and opinions to be affirmed. It's normal human behavior to crave that acknowledgement and affirmation. And so again, I think trying to give that to others, even if we don't agree, not to say, oh, you're right, but to say, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
I appreciate why you feel that way. It's completely understandable. I look at it differently, but maybe we can find, together what we agree upon.
Well said. Well said. And I like what you're saying. You do still have to stand up for who you are and what you believe. And maybe if you get that in and they don't agree, then maybe a month later, they go, wait, look what he said. That does make sense. And also it's the tone, and isn't it the attitude, how we interact with people. And if we get angry or irritated, and that to me is part of what we learn in meditation, right? To really be peaceful at all times, as much as possible. Things happen and we can, but really work on inner peace and the way we communicating with people, right? And words, the power of words. And I think that Peace Studio did a program on the power of words, I remember some years ago. And that was, words can really enhance and enrich, but they can be very hurtful too, can't they? And you being a writer and agent and literary agent, you understand that probably better than most people. The
Words
power
are very powerful, very powerful. So choosing them carefully and listening, again, just listening patiently. And as you said, sometimes not speaking, sometimes just letting things be for a while, waiting.
Yeah.
Sometimes conflicts just can resolve if we're just patient. Just give it some time.
You know what? It's like a knowingness, isn't it? It's a knowing, and that comes that going within, and like you said, meditating or thinking or being alone, having that time, that alone time, that silent time, can make a big difference in the way we react with people, or we interact, I should say, and hopefully not react with people. And I know for me, sometimes it's been a test in my life, it's been, but I feel like I've learned along the way not to just, I don't remember that I ever exploded, but where you get upset about something because you feel it's right. But it's just, it's really important to connect with people, isn't it? With love and peace. And I wanted to bring up something else about the Peace Studio, because I think it's important. I don't think we've talked about it, that how the Peace Studio really focuses on the artists and the media people, journalists, filmmakers, writers. So poets. I'm just wondering, I do sort of know, of course, but I'm just wondering how you feel about just targeting, not targeting, but really working with these people and really trying for them to understand what the Peace Studio is all about and how they can bring this into their work and their lives.
Sure. Well, ultimately, the hope of the Peace Studio is to include, anyone who wants to participate in helping create this culture of peace that we're talking about. But the focus, I think, on performing artists and storytellers and journalists, et cetera, is largely because historically, for centuries and even longer, artists have often been those empowered to create these stories that can bring people together to understand one idea or one concept, some shared ideal, et cetera. In negotiation, people talk about soft power, and often you'll hear about, in diplomacy, that this famous violinist came and performed for all the dignitaries. And there's a reason they're asking that violinist to perform, because there's something universal and accessible and meaningful to everyone in the room about listening to, let's say, a Beethoven sonata that transcends anything they might be disagreeing about or trying to work through. And that can be very powerful. And then second, I would say something we learn about in the Peace Studio and try to teach to those who come into our circle is the importance of restorative storytelling or restorative narratives. And these are stories that, while they'll recognize that violence happens and even show it in some instances, that at the end of the day are showing people operating from a place of being constructive, wanting to find nonviolent ways of solving problems, et cetera. So I do think that there is, a significant reason that we're looking to these folks as the sort of ambassadors and sort of influencers for the ideas that we're trying to impart.
And, the hope is, since they are the ones who do spread messages through their work, their writings, their, whatever, their music, everything, then the world can move faster. People can move quicker in terms of being aware, awakening. I think it's kind of an awakening. I've seen people come to some of these events over the years, and especially the young people who have participated. It's amazing. I remember one, he just said, I said, what's your experience been like to a Peace Studio event? I mean, he was part of the Catalyst Miami program, and he went 2 years in a row. And he said, I feel like I'm not alone anymore. Being an artist, or I feel like I'm alone out there. And he realized he was part of the community, and he's really into inspiring and helping others now. And, if you can change, again, people like that and make them see life in a different way. And especially these are the change makers, the ones who are in the media and the arts, because they can get these messages across, and people do respond. I think we're over time, but I know I could talk with you for a lot. I always learn from you, and when I hear from you and hear what you're, where you're moving, the directions that you're moving the Peace Studio in. And it's just a pleasure to get to talk with you about your book. And I'm going to hold it up again. Let me just, can you see it? Yeah. Is it?
There it is. Looks beautiful. Meredith, thank you so much.
Upbeat.
Wonderful conversation. And thank you for everything you do and everything that the Brahma Kumaris do.
Thank you. Thank you. To me, when you can be part of groups like, whether it's the Brahma Kumaris or, of course, the Peace Studio, or, whatever it is that, moves you, and life becomes so much easier. You just don't feel like you're alone. You feel like you are part of something very special, and you get inspired, like, constantly. So, Todd, it's really a pleasure to get to interview you.
Same. Thank you so much, Meredith.
Bye, Todd.
So long. Bye.